The video that you're about to watch is a recording between me and a few graduates from the School of Code. I've hidden their faces for privacy reasons, but you can still benefit from this video without seeing their faces. If you like this, let me know in the comments below and I'll be happy to upload more sessions like this. Okay, without further ado, let's go ahead and watch this session. Can you see my screen? Okay, silence means good. Okay, thumbs up, nice. Okay, so we're going to go through a front-end exercise and let's talk about me. So this is me with a picture of my daughter who's a lot older now, but anyway. I post a lot of stuff on social media. So if you're into TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, this is where I am. You can take a screenshot and follow me there. But I've got a lot of content about coding and stuff. So that's what I do. And what we're going to go through today is a short exercise that has actually been sent to me from an actual company. So let's go ahead and read it. Apologies for the white screen. But so this is the code test. It comes in a Word document or a Google Sheets document. And what they want us to do is to create a Hacker newsfeed. So the aim is to create a Hacker newsfeed where we need to show off our skills. So code structure and clarity, the decisions we use to make the app, HTML, CSS skills, JavaScript skills, and skills of test-driven development. So we won't get through all of these things in session, but we'll get through a good chunk of them. Okay, this is an interactive session, so feel free to ask any questions you want. You can stop me mid-flow, mid-conversation. I'm trying to figure out if I can see the Zoom chat in on my screen, but I don't seem to be able to do that. But yeah, you can.
It should give you at the bottom an option to open up the chat, hopefully.
Oh, I can see that on this side. I've got two screens, so that's a bit weird. Let me see if I can move this to the other screen. Okay, I can see the chat now. Yep, fine. So if I'm able to move that to the other screen, then yeah, so you can chat and I'll be able to see at any point any questions you have. Cool. So what we're going to do for this test is I'm going to use React because I'm most familiar with that. And to start off, I'm going to use something called Vite. So let me go into my terminal here. I think that's visible. If not, I can make it a bit larger or smaller. And Vite is let me just show you what that is a tool for building front-end applications. So it will bundle the JavaScript, CSS, HTML into one application, and it's really helpful for just making the best decisions to make a performant application. So to use it, Node.js needs to be installed. So I'm going to write node-v to show you the version I have. So I'm using 18.17.0. Node is really, really easy to install. And so that shouldn't be an issue. And to use Vite, I'm going to write npx create /Vite. And so this will install Vite if it's not installed already, but because I have installed it, it gives me some options. So I'm going to call this project SOC hacker news. So that will be the name of the file. And it gives me some options of what tools to use. So I'm going to use React. And I'm going to not use TypeScript. I use regular JavaScript. So these options here, TypeScript plus SWC, JavaScript plus SWC. These are, SWC is a tool to bundle the code. So it will compile TypeScript to JavaScript and then use modern kind of JavaScript tools for JavaScript. But to keep things simple, I'll just use regular JavaScript. Cool, so that's that. The project has been built with a template React code. So I'm going to change directory into it. So cd this file. So now I'm inside that file. And I'm going to run npm i, which is similar to npm install, which you probably already know. So I'm going to install all the dependencies. So that would be Vite, React, and anything else that's necessary. That should take a few seconds. While it does that, I'll check if there are any questions. Can you see the number? Is that, Tom, is that a new question or an old question? Great website. Oh, thanks. Old question. Oh, nice. Okay, so now that's done. So before I run the dev site, I'm going to open it inside my VS Code, which will show a bunch of stuff that shouldn't show. But anyway, don't worry about that. Okay, cool. So this is the project. I'm going to zoom in a lot so you can all see what's going on. Here we go. So these are the standard files that we get. The Vite config file, which gives React presets, and a source file, which is where all the code is going to go. right now there's already some boilerplate code, so I'm going to run that by running the dev server, which is npm run dev. So that will start the Vite dev server, and it gives a random port, which we can change, but we'll keep it as 5173 for now. Then, if I remember where my desktops are, I can go into this port, and it has a generic React app with a counter, which is not what we need. So let's change all this to make it more useful for the test that we're going to do, or the exercise. So first thing we're going to do is, let me just scroll down here. Okay, so the Hacker News API is what we're going to be using to extract information. So let's go to that here. And they use a GitHub page for it. So it's not a fancy website, but it's good enough for our use case. And so what we're going to do is we're going to extract, the document here says we want to extract the first 500 or top 500 stories. We'll probably do that initially. Because it's quite a lot, but then we'll shorten it down to about 10 or 20. So to extract the top stories, I think that is this one. No, that will be. I think it's just called stories, live data. Okay, here we go. Top story is down this one. But this is what we need. So we're just going to amend our template to be able to do that in React. So first things first, let's just get rid of the CSS because we're not going to bother about CSS at the moment. So go to that and then get rid of this from here. So this file is fine. And then in our app file, what I'm going to do is also get rid of the CSS here because we don't need it, but we will add it. No, we'll get rid of it here. I might add it a bit later in a different format. Then we'll get rid of the Vite logo because we don't need that, and the React logo because we don't need that either. Cool. So let's get rid of all the code inside app, but we'll keep the app function. And then what we want to do, I've got notes on this. I've got two screens, so notes on the screen and that, so I'll jump back and forth between them. What we're going to do first is create a user flex to just grab the data from the top stories. So I'm going to get rid of that line for now. And I'm going to close this on the side so the code's a bit bigger. And I'm going to do user flex. Effect. That will import that from there. And this will take a callback function. Again, let me know if I'm going too fast or if you have any questions. I'm happy to stop mid-flow and answer anything you have. Right. So I'm going to grab this Hacker News top stories API URL because we need that. And any user effects, I'm going to write async function. So I'm going to fetch the data. So this will take a function that will, because it's async, I can do a wait. So I'm going to do fetch the top stories. And then once I fetch that, what I'm going to do is convert the JSON. So I'm going to do const top story data, and then do await. Sorry, and to spell await, and then get top story. So first things first. So this is going to fetch that. So this will be an await as well. I'm going to assign that to a variable called get top stories. So this is going to get the data, and this is going to use the information from here to extract just the JSON because that's the data we really need. And to prove that we're getting that information, I'm just going to console log this. So you can see it in the terminal. And then I'm going to run this function. So right now this function isn't being run. So I'll run it over here. So when the app first loads, it should just run this function. So there's no data on the page at the moment. So it should just be blank. If I inspect the developer tools, go to the console, and Vite logo is not defined. Okay, so I forgot to delete the Vite logo. I think it asks for it in the HTML file. No. Okay, here we go. So this is the data. Now it looks a bit weird. So we've got 500 stories. I don't know how visible that is. Let me make it a bit bigger. So we've got 500 stories in here, but they're just all numbers. And the weird thing about the Hacker News API is you have to then fetch fetch those numbers. So do another fetch call on each individual number to get the actual news information or the story information. So just before I do that, I'll check if there are any questions. Okay. Oh, someone took a screenshot. Sorry, I should have given you guys the link. If you guys want a link, I can put one in the chat. So you've got a MacBook Pro, should check out the app. Better Touch Tool. What is Better Touch Tool? I'll make a note of that later. But thanks for sharing. It's Nephi says I'm coming up. Not sure. Okay. Oh, thanks, Dean, for sharing that. Cool. Yeah, but if you guys want a link to the test, I'm happy to share it. I'm happy to put it in the chat. So if I see thumbs up, yeah, I see a shake, a head shake, so I'll put that in. Hopefully it'll share fine. Cool. Okay, so where we were was we need to run a fetch on each individual number to get the story, and the API we need for that is, I believe, it's that one. So as you can see here, this is the code for the story that prints that out. So if I were to say grab one of the codes for this one, I'll close that tab since you don't need it anymore. So grab one of these numbers. So if I make a new tab and then just copy, I don't know, this long string over there, and then paste that over here, you'll see we get information about that story. So we need to do that for each number, and then we'll get information. So let's do that. Okay, no questions. So to do that, we are going to use a method called promise.all. I'll show it to you and then I'll explain it afterwards. So let me get rid of that. And then inside this function, this fetch data function, we're going to do another fetch call. So I'm going to do const story data to get each story data. And then I'm going to loop over this. So this gives numbers, as you just saw, it gives 500 numbers in an array. So loop over this array with the array map method. And then inside here, we're going to do an async because we're going to do a fetch. And then we're going to get the story ID. So assuming that each one of these things in here is a story ID, then when we loop over this array, each one will be an ID. So this will be the story ID. And then in the story ID, we are going to get the data. So we get data or story data. We'll do story data. I'm going to do a fetch or a wait fetch. Then we're going to use that API endpoint, which I believe is that. So we'll copy that and we use backticks to put that in. And then over here, we'll put the story ID, which that should be ID. Okay, so that's going to do, I don't need that because I don't need a pretty print, just want the information. So this is going to loop over this and then do a fetch call for each one of these. So and then return data. So return basically this because we want the JSON, but then we want to get story data. So we'll return story data. So right now this story data variable is an array of fetch calls, and so we want to make all these fetch calls efficiently. We don't want to do it one by one. We want to do it. We want to let JavaScript choose the best way to do that. And to do that, we use a method called promise.all. So I'm going to get all the stories in a variable, and we're going to use promise.all. And this will, it tells you here, it creates a promise so you pass it in an array of promises, and then we'll just do it at the best time, like do it in the correct order. So it will do them kind of all at once. But if there's any errors, it will return the errors. It won't stop doing it. It will just keep doing all the promises, if that makes sense. So I pass all the arrays here, so I'll get all of that. And because this is a promise, we want to await it. So await means that don't continue the code until all the data has been fetched. So it will sit there until it gets some data. And then what I'm going to do, just to show you that it works, is to console, can't spell, log all stories. Okay, so I get rid of that console log. So we don't get confused. I'll save that. And then when I go back to the code, and refresh, it will take a while because it's a lot of data. Any moment now. Come on, come on. There you go. Right, so you can see we get information about each story. These kids, I think, are the comments from the stories. So again, you can loop over each ID to get comments, but we don't want that. So we've got title, on modern computer architecture and organization, and we've got a link to it. So as you can see, that took a really long time, and we don't want to let the. I mean, we can let the user wait. We can present a really nice loaded screen, but for the sake of time, I want it to happen a bit quicker. So before I continue, let's check if we have any questions. No questions? Cool. Okay, that's fine. You could also use, I don't know if you've heard of promise all settled, which is probably a slightly safer way, because it will give you the promises that have resolved and then give you the ones that have rejected. And so you can handle them in whatever way you want. But we'll use all for now just because I know they're all going to resolve. Okay. So before we actually, let me just go ahead in my notes and just check something. Okay. So what we want to do is just, let's say we're going to fetch just the top kind of 20 stories instead of getting all the stories. So we'll do top 20. Top 20 stories. And we are going to, because this gives us an array of digits or numbers like you saw, what we can do is use the array splice methods to just get the first 20 numbers, and then we'll just use that for this. Yeah, so we'll do this spliced or splice 0 for the first one, 20 for the last one, so we get the first 20, and then we can loop over that here. So it's just loop over, so it'll just return 20 promises, and then we'll just do 20 promises instead of 500. So if I, yeah, so without refreshing, you get 20. That was really quick. And I can refresh now, and it will take like 2 seconds to get the data. The reason it does it twice is because React is in strict mode. So if I, actually, it's just here. Here, so React is in strict mode. And what strict mode does, which I'm sure you all know, but I'll just tell you anyway, it makes checks to the code to make sure it's not violating any React principles or using any old APIs or old methods that React have had depreciated. But if I was to get rid of strict mode, comment that one out, and then save that and refresh, it will just do it. It'll just do it once. But during development, React recommends using strict mode. But in production, it will take strict mode off. So it's fine to keep it on for development. And when you deploy your app live, or if we deploy this live, it won't apply strict mode, so it'll just run once. Cool. Okay, so now we have the data that we want. Let's present this data in React, which is a more easy step than fetching the data. So what we're going to do is going to put data inside a state, which we'll call stories. So we go const stories, and we'll create a getter called set stories. Set stories, sorry, setter. This is the getter, this is the setter. Set stories equals use state. And this by default I'm going to make null, just because, and there's a reason behind me making it null, it'll just help with loading. And I'll explain all that later. So now when this gets the data, we'll put it inside the state, which is set stories. And then with that, I have access to this. Is that spelled correctly? Yeah, stories. And so what I can do outside of these effect down here is return. Let's return the header first. Just we'll put a fragment here because I know it's going to be a lot of code. And we're going to do h1, and then I'm going to loop over the stories. So I'm going to put curly braces here, stories.map, and then we will call one story. And then we'll put actually you don't need curly braces here. We can just return a div. Oh, that didn't work. Div with the story title. Is that an option? It's like the annoying thing about doing live coding is all the kind of bad coding things that I do in real life come to light. Okay, story title. And then is that all correct? So div, why is it giving me squigglies? Story.title does exist, doesn't it? Let's have a look. I think it does. Yeah, it should exist. Story title, yeah, it does exist. Oh, it's missing it. Okay, fine. Because we're doing a map, we need a key. So the key in this case, sorry, makes sense for it to be the ID. And I'll explain. If you have any questions about that, feel free to ask. There's no such thing as a silly question. Cool. There we go. So now, if I go to the browser, it should change automatically, but if it doesn't, I'm going to refresh. I've made a mistake. Okay, fine. So the reason that's null, and I've done that null on purpose, is because, or the reason that error exists is because when the code first runs, it runs null. So this here will be null. So what we can do is have an if statement. Actually, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let's make it an empty array to fix that temporarily, and then we'll make it null again once we get to that part of the code. So we're just testing that all the titles work, which so we've got 20 titles. Let me clear that because it's confusing. 20 titles from the top 20 articles. Okay. Any questions? Okay, here we go. Please go over the lines about all stories again. Absolutely. I'm more than happy to do that. Which line in particular? If you give me the line number, I can do that. Is that this bit? Line 18? Yes, okay. So all stories here, the set all stories setter is putting the information. So this is an array of objects that contain information about each story. And it's putting that whole array into this stories kind of getter, or it's putting it into the React state. So the React state has all this information and it's stored it under this getter called stories. And so this gives us access to that whole array of data, if that makes sense. Does that answer the question? No, you're so confused. Are you happy to speak? And we can have a dialogue about it quickly. Or you can type it in. Yeah, well, you can type this question again, and I'll answer it. I'm running out of free database accounts for projects. Can anyone recommend a site like once if you use Superbase? I'm not going to be at the moment. That's a good question. I think Firebase is eventually quite good for free database accounts, but you can always make a new email, make a new account with Superbase. Are you using an extension of some sort? Yes. Okay, very good question, Tom. That is an excellent question. So I'm using something called font ligatures. So let me explain that to you with the settings, JSON, and I'm going to search for ligatures. So ligatures is a way of merging similar symbols together. So if I make this false, you will see in my code that this is probably what you're used to, with the equals and the greater than or less than being separate. This is a personal preference of mine, and it only works with certain fonts. So I'm using a font called Furocode, but I like it true because I just prefer reading it with ligatures together. But if you don't, you can turn it off. Or if you don't want me to turn it on, I can turn it off. Just let me know. It's really good to see a pro coding live. I'm happy you think I'm a pro. I think I'm okay. So quick, yeah. I'm quite annoying that you tend to go quite quickly, but feel free to stop me at any point, and I'll explain things in more detail. Yeah, I've looked at syntax about 60 times by now. Sorry about that, Dean. I'm happy to go slower, and luckily this is recorded, so you're able to watch it multiple times in your own pace, at your own pace. I occasionally put comments of the possible choices for the API at the top of the file. Yes, that's a very good point. I'll come back to that later, Tom. But for now, we'll leave it as is. It's the all. I'm not sure what this question is referring to. Oh, the all, the promise. Okay, so the promise to all is what you have. Okay, fine. So it's quite difficult to explain without an example. But if you imagine we had a for loop. This is pseudocode. So we had a for loop or a for each. So this right now is an array. This is an array of promises. So this will have like inside it will have awaits, fetch. It'll have all this code basically inside here. We can put that inside, but basically this will have an array of all that stuff, right? So I have like 20 of these. inside this array. And what we could do is we could have a story data for each that will loop over this and then execute the promise. So the promise here, in this case, will go and fetch the data. So here, we'll fetch the data and then bring back the data. And then we just want the JSON from it. So we run this JSON method. And what promise.all does is it will do them all efficiently. So based on the promises, it will do them all at once, or it will do them all sequentially, but it will do them all efficiently, and we don't have to do this for each. So this saves me from doing for each and running them all one by one, because this will do that for me, if that makes sense. There are, let me just see if MDN does a better job. Probably does a better job of explaining it than I would. Promise all takes static method iterable promises, input and return distinct promise. So yeah, so you just put multiple promises. So in this example, there are 3 promises in there, and it'll just return the resolve value. So this here resolves to 3. That's just 42. I don't know why that's in the promise, and this will resolve to foo. So when that runs, it's just a nicer way of doing that instead of doing the for loop myself, if that makes sense. Okay, keep it on. Okay, yeah, I'll keep it on. Let's find out very cool. Yeah, happy to keep it on. And thanks for your comments. Feel free to add more. Feel free to pause me at any point if you want to have a chat. Cool. Okay, let's continue. Also, if you have any questions about keyboard shortcuts I'm using or extensions I have or themes, please feel free to ask. Where were we? So right now we are displaying the title. And actually, I forgot to give you guys some very important information on this document, because this document does have, you might have seen already, it does have some diagrams of how they want it to look. So this is optional. We don't have to make it look like this, but this is the information they want to see from us. So based on that, we can add more information than the title. So we can put in who the story's by. So we can say this story title by story.by. So this will give us a person who wrote the story. Why is it giving me? Oh, because this needs to be wrapped inside a parent. So I'll put it in an article. Yes. And we'll wrap that all around here. It still freaks out because it's missing. The key needs to go outside. Put that here. Okay, so that's inside. So we've got this title by whoever, and we can actually wrap this title in a anchor tag because it's got a link. So we can put that in anchor, and you should never put a div inside an anchor because it's just bad practice. So I'll take that out, and we can link to the story URL. Now this is going to give me an error. It should give me an error, but it hasn't. Okay, that's bad. It's meant to give me an error about doing the link. So I'm going to do target blank, which means it will open a new tab. And then it should give me an error saying I need to have this on it, which is to do with security. So I will copy that and then paste that here. Okay, so we've got the story title, which will link to the story in a new tab. We've got who it's by, and what else can we add? We can also add the score, which I'm not a user of Hacker News, but if you are, you probably know what that is. So I'm going to do span. I'm going to put in the story score. Okay. So our story or our page does have a bit more information about each story now. So we've got the score, we've got the title and a link. So if I click on it, it will take me to, the page. And then, we've got who it's by. Let's add a space actually before that. So I'm going to do, what's the best way to do that? Do curly braces and then just do a space in between. So there's a space after by. And so we've got some spaces after the title. And so what I want to do, let's go back to making this null. So what I want to do is have some loading text. And the way I want to do that is to show the word loading if stories doesn't exist. So if stories doesn't exist, so that would be I'll put curly braces here, and that would be a ternary, which is a question mark. Oh, sorry, I'm talking to myself now. So what we want to do is do story. So if story exists, or stories exist, then we want to return this information. So I can get rid of this one here, that one. It's going to look a bit weird, but it'll make more sense when I finish it. So we want to return all this stuff. And then if story doesn't exist, so then we do colon. I think is that no, after this yellow, then we want to print the words in a div loading. Cool. So if we were to ramp this up to say 200, so it'll take it'll be a bit slower. And if I go back to the browser, refresh the page, then we get loading text at the beginning because it's getting the data. And then once it has the data, it will pop this up. So we've got 200 articles. So I'll put it back to 20, but this is the reason why I've made that null. If it were an empty array, we could still do that, but we'd have to check for the length. So story.length equals 0. So if it's 0, if it's more than 0, then you show the data. And if it is 0, then we just show loading. But personal preference, I just like having null because arrays null's just more easier to deal with. Okay, what else can we do here? What we can do now is we have our data. We've got it in React, and so what we can do is add some style to it. Now, in the interest of time, instead of me creating my own CSS file from scratch, I'm going to use something called Tailwind, and Tailwind is something that I wouldn't say I'm an expert on, but it's a way for developers to rapidly add styles to their sites by using utility classes. So I'll explain more of that a bit later. But let's go ahead and install it. So I've made some notes on how to install it here, but there's a guide to do it for Vite, which I'm going to follow, and I'm going to put that in the chat as well if you guys want to follow that as well. Speaking of chat, let's check any questions. Your keyboard sounds different. Is that a question to me? I guess. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I don't know how much you can see on the camera, but I'm using a mechanical keyboard, and that's why it sounds different. You want to see this? Yeah. It won't make you a better dev. It just makes you feel cooler. But yeah, it sounds quite loud. Okay, maybe it's kind of very, very nice. Yeah, mechanical. It's not a competition. Okay, so this is the link to Tailwind. Okay, I put it in the wrong part of the chat. Let's delete that.
You've got a hand up as well, Richard. I think Bidan.
Oh, cool. Yeah, whoever put their hand up.
Hi, yeah. I was just typing in the chat, but I thought, okay, I just wanted to know, all this code you're typing in now, is there somewhere you could have it online, like a sort of repo somewhere just for reference later?
Yeah.
If I could, will there be a link to it somewhere?
So I'll do that after the session. I'll create a repo and then share it with you.
Oh, right. Okay, great. Thanks.
I haven't done it yet, but I will do it. So it might be like an hour or two. Okay, CSS, yes, please. That's my keyboard. Which brand? It's actually called God. I think it's a Chinese brand, but it works well. Yeah, I'm used to Tailwind. I use YouTube. Yeah, manually is fine. I think I'm happy with manually. I think Tailwind in this case is quite fast, and it's just quick for the session instead of us doing it manually. So what I'm going to do is go through the process of installing Tailwind. So we're going to go back to the terminal and close the server by pressing Command C. And let's go back to the doc. So here, we've already done this step. We've created our project. And so we're going to install Tailwind. So we'll do these two. And we'll do them both at the same time. So I'm going to do that one and then do double ampersands and do that one. So this will do the first one and then the other one afterwards. Cool. And then I think there's some other steps after that. Yeah, so you create a Tailwind config. So I guess this is a decent primer into Tailwind if you ever want to use it. New file, Tailwind config, and then you're going to copy and paste basically all the stuff here. So yeah, that's fine. We don't have any custom themes, so we don't have to put any themes in there or plugins, and that's installed fine. So we're going to run the dev server. And Tailwind unknown word. I'll add that to my dictionary. And that should go away. Any more steps? I think that okay, so we create an index.css file and we put these in there. Actually, maybe we should do that before we run the dev server. So let's quit that, and then I'm going to create a index CSS inside here. Put that in here. There's a VS Code plugin that kind of helps with this sort of stuff, which I've got installed, just the Tailwind official plugin. And so now it recognizes this as a Tailwind file and not a regular CSS file. And then final step is to import, what is it? Index CSS? Index CSS into here. And then we should have Tailwind in our project. And that's how simple it is. Okay. Are they installed? Yes, they are installed. Ooh. Import CSS. Okay, fine. Oh, index CSS. Like call it index CSS. It should be /index CSS because I'm referencing the same directory. Okay, will that fix itself? No, I'll restart the server. Cool. Okay, that's all worked. And so immediately we should see that our site looks a bit different. Okay, so now we've got a different header style, loading. And I've still got 200, fine. But all the styles are different. And what's happened is Tailwind has applied what's called a reset. So each browser has its own default styles that it applies to the page. And what Tailwind does is, or any CSS reset file will do, is reset it so all the browsers have the same kind of base style. So from here we can add our own styles. And so let me get rid of this. So we can add give me a sec. We'll add some styles to the header. So we'll create a header first. Here, so we'll call it hacker news. And styles in Tailwind that are really easy to add. It's similar to adding a regular class name. And we are going to give it a text size of 3 extra large because it's quite big. And we'll give it a font of bold. And we'll give it a padding bottom of 3 to separate it from the rest of the stories. And we'll see what that does. Cool. Now, Tailwind, the Tailwind classes are quite difficult to remember. So it's always useful to kind of have this open, and then it's easy to search with Command K. So I can do color, and it gives like all the files used for colors, like decoration, inherit, and all that stuff. But if you look at how it works, so if you go into here, give me a sec. There you go. So each class, so font bold, text 3 extra large, usually has a rule to it. And this kind of makes it more reusable. So if I want to use padding bottom 3 somewhere else, I can just put the same class and I'll use that same CSS rule. This saves from having multiple padding bottom 3s in the code base. Yeah. Any questions about that before I continue? Oh, okay. Thanks for posting the Vites. I thought I did that, but it's okay. June just crashed. Doesn't like my camera today. Sorry about that, team. You can add a photo if you're in the chat, so you can open it up. Okay, fine. Yeah. I think that's the VS Code plugin that I'm referring to. Yeah. Okay. So let's start the rest of the document. And one advantage of using Tailwind, well, not really much of an advantage, but it's just speed-wise, is you don't have to memorize like a bunch of CSS grid rules or CSS flexbox rules because Tailwind just gives you those utility classes from the get-go. Okay, so what we're going to do is wrap all this in a div. So I'm going to put this in a div like so. I'm going to, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Okay, so wrap that in a div just because I want to add styles to it. So put that here. And I'm going to apply a grid to all our, oh, what's happened? Oh, I forgot to put curly braces. Yeah, actually curly braces. JSX is a bit annoying sometimes. So I'm going to use CSS grid without writing any CSS code. And I'm going to do grid. We'll give it a grid gap of 2. And we'll give that, give it 4 columns. So columns 4, and we'll give it 4 rows. 4, and we'll also make the text a bit smaller. So this is going to match kind of design that we got from the document over here. Even though it doesn't have 4, it's got rows and columns. Now we can style each one of these boxes or each one of these stories. And we're going to class name. We're going to use Flexbox to do that. Apologies if this is like too much CSS at once, but I'm happy to explain if you have any questions. So we're going to do flex, and we're going to do items. So this will, I think, align it to the left. Items. Start, and we'll give it a gap of 1. We'll make the background blue, but it'll be like a blue, which is this color, like a lightish blue. And then we'll give it a rounded borders, so rounded, medium or rounded, and then we'll give it a padding top of 2. Let's see what that looks like. Cool. Okay, so it does look a bit weird, but it's a work in progress. And then we want to center the text. So what we're going to do is wrap all the text that we have available in a div. There are other classes, other elements than div. So we could use a section just to make it a bit more, just to not have too many divs in the page. I wrap all of this. Actually, is that what I want to do? Yes. Yeah. And I wrap just the score inside this. So the score is going to stay on the left-hand side, and then the title and the by is going to be on the right-hand side. So this div does that, and then we want this to be. Actually, we'll leave it for now. And then what I want to do is add an icon. So Tailwind actually, not the people who made Tailwind. Sorry, I can't see because the Zoom thing's taken over. Have made this thing called, I think it's called it's like an icon library, which is quite useful. But I have the link to it here. I know what it's called, but I just want to find the link here. No. Okay. Hero icons or hero icons. And what I'm going to do is kind of put an icon next to the score, just to make it look a bit cooler. So we'll copy the SVG or the JSX because we're using React, and we'll paste that under the score. So here, sorry, I copied the wrong thing. Let's copy the JSX. There we go. And then what we're going to do is, let's see what it looks like first, actually. So that should, yep, so we've got that. And then we'll center this because this is a bit too close to the left. So we'll do class name, text center. And then we are going to move this into its own div. So the story end by, just so that they're together and they're not making their own flex columns. And we are going to put an underline under the story. So because we're using a reset, we lose some of the anchor styling, so we need to put them back in. And I'll make the font bold. Cool. One more thing before we go, or before we stop CSS. I'm not going to go just yet. We've still got more time. It's just style this a tiny bit. Text extra small, and then we'll give it a margin of 1 at the top. Cool. So this is looking a lot better. I mean, it's not amazing. I'm not a designer, but I'd say this is good enough for you to kind of get what this is doing. Cool. So let's do a bit more refactoring here. You may have noticed that the fetch data function we have here on line 7 isn't doing a good job of handling errors. So if for some reason this fetch here or that fetch fails, like the internet's down, we wouldn't get much information to the user. So I can simulate that now. let's first change this from Firebase IO, just get rid of some characters. And then we refresh this page. And then we just get loading forever. And we get some errors in the console, but the user has no idea what's going on. So we can fix that. We can make it more user-friendly. And the kind of most immediate thing to do is to wrap everything in something called a try-catch. So what try-catch will do is it will try everything in the try block, and if there's any error, it'll catch that out. So let's first do that. So let's wrap everything here in the try-catch. We'll do all that stuff here, and then we'll put a catch here. Catch usually has an argument, which is the error. And then what we can do is we can console log the error. Our console error the error. Okay. So this is great for developers because then we can see what the issue is, but the user wouldn't get any information. So what we can do is duplicate this line. I'm just going to say error, and we're going to set error. So that'll be null by default. And if there is an error, we can set this error in here, and then we can make our code even crazier by putting another if statement to saying if there's an error, then we want to display some text that's and so these are how do you spell occurred? Okay. So these will see that, but we don't want them to see this. So we don't want them to see any of that. So what we can do is say, okay, if there is an error, then set stories to null. Right. So or to an empty array. That's even better. So if there's an empty array, then this bit here, actually, hang on a minute, if that bit exists. Yeah, I think it's an empty array. I think that's what we want. That's always an empty array. And then here, we want to set error here to null. This is just in case we fix the error at some point in the future. I'm not sure about this empty array, but let's just see it. So let's simulate an error. Okay, Firebase is still Firebase. Refresh the page, and error has occurred. Perfect. And we just get a bunch of errors. Now, you'll notice this number keeps going up, and this is something I completely forgot to do. Right now, I use effect is happening on each kind of re-render of React. So each time there's a re-render, this will happen. And it's re-rendering a lot because this error happens. It just keeps setting the error and setting the stories. So what we can do is have a dependency array, an empty dependency array, which means that it will only run once when there's a render, and it's not going to run again. So we'll change that now. So as you can see, it just happens here. So that number doesn't increment; it just happens once, and that's it. Well, twice in our case because you've got that strict mode, but in production it'll happen once. So cool. So our app is handling errors correctly. We don't need that. One thing we could also do to kind of refactor it, which is kind of something that I like to do, is to put all of this inside a custom hook. So what I like to do is separate the logic from the templating. Before I do that, let's check if there are any questions because I've talked for a long time. So, and utilizing fully through writing CSS parameters. Yes, yes. So you can do a bit more than that. You can actually add themes. So in the Tailwind config, you can put your own custom themes. You can put custom variables you have, which will then override the Tailwind variables, and you can add extra plugins. But because all you're doing is adding a class name inside here, you can create your own CSS and add your own custom class names. And there's actually a way to have a class name that encapsulates Tailwind classes as well. I haven't looked into that, but if you don't like seeing loads of class names in your components, you can do that. You can take things out. Just like Bootstrap. Yeah, it's similar to Bootstrap. I missed some of the talk because we crashed out. Sorry about that, team. Hopefully you can catch up. Pretty much using shorthand as well as SM for small. Yep, yeah, it's pretty much shorthands. I think the more you use Tailwind, the more you kind of memorize the classes and stuff. I know we've got 5 minutes left, so let's see if we can wrap this in a custom hook in 5 minutes. Actually, a really quick process. So what I'm going to do is create a new file inside the source called use hacker news stories. Sorry, wrong thing. New file, use hacker news stories, and that'd be a regular JavaScript file. And then we can copy all of this, use effects, including actually we want to keep hold of all the states as well. So copy all the states and also the fetch data here. Don't need tailwinds, don't need this, need that one. So export default function, use hacker news store these, paste all that in here. And then this is giving me errors because use state is not imported, so I'll import that, and I'll also import use effect. Okay, and these aren't being used because I think I can just return them. So what we can do is inside this function, we can just return stories and error. Okay, so this is being returned in my custom hook. And then it's just to import the custom hook. We can get rid of all this stuff here. So here, all our states, all that stuff. And then we can just import, or I'll just use it here. Const stories error. And I'll just do use hacker new stories. That will be here. And then I can get rid of this line as well. Okay, so fingers crossed that all works. Refresh page, an error occurs, that's working fine. But let's change this back to Firebase. Cool. Refresh. Is it still 200? Did I make it 200 still? I should make it 20. Yeah, so it's got 200 stories. Too many stories to load up. But yeah, as you can see, that all works. And this here, this file clears all our logic. So all our business logic, and this file just contains a template. So if you want to change something to do with the style, we just look at this file. If you want to look at something to do with logic, we look at the custom. So that's a nice separation of concerns. Any more questions? Sorry, I missed you, Nitch. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. Okay. What else can we do? Well, I guess there's a lot more we can do in terms of refactoring. Have some custom components here. So this could be a component on its own. But I know we have 3 minutes left, so I don't want to do anything big in a short amount of time. Is there anything you want me to go over while we're close to the end of the session? Do you have LinkedIn? Yes, I do. If you do a search for, I'll type my full name. Do a search for that. You'll see me. Also, before we end, I'm sure we'll have time, but before we end, I do have a short survey here. Okay, here we go. Yeah, for you to do this, I'll put a link in the chat as well, just to know how I went, how I was as a presenter. If there's anything you want to see me talk about more, if there's anything you want me to improve, please let me know.